After a disappointing season where the San Antonio Spurs do not make the NBA playoffs, is Demar DeRozan interested in finding himself on a contender? And could that contender possibly be the Toronto Raptors? Let's get into it. Welcome to Amateur Hour Sports, where we're getting close to 700 subscribers on the channel. So if it is your first time here with me today, you like what you see, you want more of myself talking about the Toronto Raptors, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much to everybody who's been giving out the support over the last week. It's been a very good week for the channel. Let's hope we can keep pushing along with that. But on to today's topic. Demar DeRozan, he has the ability this offseason to terminate his contract early. He's set to make $27 million this year with the San Antonio Spurs. But, you know, there's options for Demar DeRozan. He could get traded, he could terminate that contract like I said, and maybe he's interested in finding a new team because the Spurs, they play some ugly basketball, truthfully. It is not the Spurs of 5-10 years ago, you know, where the Spurs ball movement thing was there. The Spurs play some ugly basketball. And when you have basically the two mid-range kings of the NBA, DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge, it's going to be ugly basketball when you watch them play. DeMar DeRozan is one of the most boring players to watch, truthfully. Truthfully, that's how it is. The way he plays the ISO in the mid-range, not shooting threes, it does not tailor towards the modern NBA. However, DeMar DeRozan puts up some good numbers, over 22 points per game on 53% shooting, but it's just not that entertaining to watch. However, I do think he should have been an all-star this year. Out of everybody who made it, DeMar DeRozan was having a great season, putting up some great points per game. I think he could have been an all-star this year. Especially if he goes to the East, DeMar DeRozan would be an all-star. So, Toronto, who maybe cannot bring back Fred VanVleet, who would have that extra, let's say, $22 million to spend, maybe they could find themselves in a position to give DeMar DeRozan a contract, whether it be this offseason or the next offseason. But how would DeMar DeRozan gel with this new look Toronto Raptors? It's a different team than from what he left a couple years ago when we got Kawhi Leonard. So would he be able to fit into that dynamic? Would the Spurs let him go in a trade? Would DeMar DeRozan want to take a pay cut, I guess, and terminate his contract early? Let's start with the personal thing with DeMar DeRozan. If the Raptors wanted to bring him back, and they expressed it to him that they wanted to bring him back, and told him if he terminates his contract early, they'll give him this contract, whatever, DeMar DeRozan comes to the Raptors. I don't think DeMar DeRozan is ready to throw away that $27 million because the way the NBA is trending, like I said, is away from players like DeMar DeRozan. So he's not making $27 million again. I don't think he's ever going to make those figures in his career. Yet, he still has that 1 year to make $27 million. So I think in terms of the early termination, there's no way DeMar DeRozan is going to exercise that and take a pay cut somewhere else. As far as the trade goes, it's possible. Maybe the Spurs want to shake it up, and I think DeMar DeRozan is the guy with the most amount of value. Maybe they're going to look to start rebuilding, see if they can get more out of DeJounte Murray next season because he is a guy with a lot of potential at the point guard position. Maybe you want to give him a better piece to work with, play around with LaMarcus Aldridge if you can, but I think the Spurs could definitely be interested in moving DeMar DeRozan, especially considering that he's likely to leave them in free agency when he is a UFA in the next offseason. In that scenario, the Spurs don't want to come up empty-handed. They need to start rebuilding. I know they were close to the playoffs this year, but they really cannot compete with this pool of players that they currently have. I think rebuilding is the best thing for the Spurs, and the best thing in order to start rebuilding would be to move on from DeMar DeRozan. Next offseason's free agent class is highlighted by Giannis, and that is exactly what the Raptors are pushing for in that offseason. So if DeMar DeRozan rides out this contract and becomes a UFA in the next offseason, is he going to be that piece that the Raptors are going out for? Because they're going all out in order to get Giannis. That is exactly what they have made all these contracts for. They have designed all these contracts, the big contracts like Lowry's, to run out next offseason so that they can go all out, give everything they have to get Giannis in a Toronto Raptors jersey. Their focus is not going to be on DeMar DeRozan. At best for DeRozan, the Raptors don't get Giannis, and in an emergency situation where they really didn't get anybody, that would be their guy, hoping to get him at about $23 million maybe. But he is not by any means the first priority for the Raptors to chase in that free agent class. So it doesn't look great for the possibility of DeMar DeRozan returning to the Toronto Raptors. But do they even want him to come back? I mean, DeMar DeRozan, like I said, does not fit the Raptors system anymore. The way he plays in that ISO mid-range would not tailor to the way the Raptors play basketball. They play really fluid offense. Everybody can shoot threes. Even both their bigs get on the perimeter and shoot threes. They get good high percentage shots in the paint. They designate only a few players to take those mid-range shots, mainly Serge Ibaka, Kyle Lowry, rarely Fred VanVleet. You're looking at Serge and Kyle taking those mid-range shots. Analytics are key in the way the Raptors play offense, and DeMar DeRozan is not a friend of the analytics gurus because his shots inefficient, but he made them very efficient this year at 53%. DeMar DeRozan does not take threes. He would take away some space on the Raptors offense. I don't think paying this guy in the mid-20 millions would be a good move for the Toronto Raptors. I think ultimately that would come down to the Raptors in an emergency situation next offseason. They didn't land the free agents they were gunning for, and just to not come up empty-handed after losing a lot of players to free agency, they want to get DeMar DeRozan back. But in that scenario, you likely don't have Kyle Lowry on the team unless he takes a pay cut, because Kyle Lowry's making over $30 million this year. He's going to want another contract worth a lot of money at the end of this season. And if the Raptors, I don't know if they can afford that, especially if they want to target somebody else like Giannis. If they want to bring in DeRozan, maybe he wouldn't even want to come back if Kyle Lowry wasn't here, the way those two get along. There's so many variables involved in this. And a lot of these variables complicate the situation to the point where there's just too many moving pieces involved in order for this deal to make sense for not just the Toronto Raptors, but also DeMar DeRozan. Would he really want to come back and play under Masai Ujiri, who traded him for Kawhi Leonard? The reason he had to leave Toronto in the first place. Yes, the Raptors got their championship out of that, but does DeMar DeRozan forgiving for that aspect? Does DeMar DeRozan think that had he stayed, they could have still won that NBA championship without Kawhi Leonard, even though that is completely untrue? Do you think DeMar DeRozan has thoughts about that, if they could have won the championship even if he stayed? I personally do not think so, but we don't know what DeMar DeRozan's thinking. Does he want to come back to Toronto? Because it is a bit of a betrayal, what happened. And DeMar DeRozan thought that he was sacrificed for those 9 years he gave the Toronto Raptors, and he was sacrificed in order to get Kawhi and go after that NBA championship. And he's right. That's exactly what happened. He was sacrificed in order to make the team better, to get that one superstar piece to go out and win that championship. But you got to realize the NBA is a business. And if you're out there about to make your team better, about to turn your team into a contender, even for a single year, you need to make that risky jump and go all out for the Larry O'Brien, because the windows of opportunity for a championship are not that wide. So if you ever have that window and you see something that can create that window, you have to gamble and take that on. You can be like a team like the Utah Jazz, like the Indiana Pacers, who are just happy to finish as a 4, 5, or 6 seed every year, make the playoffs, keep your fans happy. The Raptors were in a bit of that. They finished higher seeds, but with that crop of players, they never really threatened for an NBA championship. But if you can make your team that elite set of players and get that elite star for only 1 year and go after the championship, you got to decide as a franchise if you're willing to take that risk and take it from the Raptors. That risk is worth it. So that wraps up this video. Ultimately, I think there's too much involved for DeMar DeRozan to come back to Toronto, but would you want DeRozan back in a Raptors uniform? Do you think it would make sense for both parties in order to make that happen? Let me know your opinion in the comments down below. But that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you are still here, please like the video. If you like and subscribe to Amateur Hour Sports for more content just like this, NBA content with a focus on the Toronto Raptors 4 days a week. Hit the notification bell as well to stay up to date with all those videos. Getting close to 700 subscribers. Thank you so much to everybody who is constantly supporting, who has already hit that button, and anybody else who chooses to do so as we go to 700 and beyond. At the end of the day, I believe what I say. If you disagree, that is okay. We'll see you again next time for another video.